Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to the final day of eyeshadow palette week. The time has come, the week has ended. Today we are going to wrap it up with a little old school YouTube made me buy it palette edition. So I have 12 eyeshadow palettes today that YouTubers made me buy for one reason or another. And when I say made me buy, I really mean like they inspired my purchase. No one made me buy anything. But I thought this would be a fun way to chit chat about some palettes throughout my collection, as well as just spotlight and highlight some YouTubers that I personally love, adore, and watch all the time. There's a couple of YouTubers that like I don't even know if they still YouTube, but I definitely purchased palettes off of the recommendation, and we're going to chat about it today. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel and you like project panning content or palette themed content, I'd love if you'd consider subscribing before moving on. And I also just started a book channel, so if you're into bookish content, check that out. It will be listed down below. Other than that, if you are interested in hearing about 12 different eyeshadow palettes that were purchases inspired by 12 different YouTubers, stay tuned. And I almost went into my intro again. Let's get into the video. Guys, I'm literally so proud of myself. I am wearing my Project Pan liquid lipstick. This is the second time that I'm wearing it. I'm also wearing the same makeup that I would have been wearing in Friday's video. I was gonna change shirts, but I ate 3 pieces of pizza and it's such a tight shirt that I'm like, oh, taking this off is gonna make me feel real guilty for eating those 3 pieces of pizza. So I tossed on a vampy lip and here we sit. So the palettes that I have to chat about today either were purchased and inspired by a specific YouTuber, or there's a couple where just like using this specific palette, like every time I use this palette I think of a specific YouTuber, and we're gonna get into it all. So we can start with like the most obvious. I believe this is my only collaboration within this video, but I have 2 palettes to chat about for Angie. I'm not even gonna try and pronounce her name. Angelica. That's definitely not, that's like the very Americanized way to say her name, but I absolutely adore Angie's channel. She just like cracks me up, and she is someone who like I feel like is almost like my spirit animal. Like I feel like if we met in person we would just have like a riot together. There's just something about her that just like, I love her so much. Her makeup taste is definitely a lot more vibrant and colorful than mine, but I still absolutely love watching her channel. And both times that she came out with collabs, I knew I was going to purchase them. She came out with collaborations with 2 of my favorite indie brands as well, so it worked out perfectly. So her first collab was the Club Nebula palette in collaboration with Kaleidos, and this is what this palette looks like. Outside of my comfort zone, but I still absolutely love this palette and I've had so much fun with it. I love the shimmer, like all of the shimmers, and this bottom row I've created some really fun pinky corally orangey looks that I love, and I just truly do feel very inspired when reaching into this palette. Normally I feel like I'd look at a palette like this and feel super intimidated, but I just feel excited, happy, and creatively motivated when I open this one up. So obviously I had to shout that one out. And then even more so, I feel like this palette right here, I have truly reached into this palette so much this year, and this isn't just me saying like it's a favorite and I use it so much, because in my head I think that, like, truly I know, like, I reach into this so frequently, even if it's just reaching into the shade right here, which is double-sided. This is one of my favorite inner corner highlights throughout my entire collection. But the greens, the yellows, the pinks, these bluey special shades at the bottom, this is just such an incredible palette. Angie did such an amazing job with both of her collabs. Love them so freaking much. I would be devastated if these got lost or I didn't have these in my collection. Next up, let me quickly talk about 2 YouTubers, one who I know does not make content anymore, and that is Julia Musicato. She was someone who I looked forward to every single video that she posted. I don't know what it was about her and her content, but I just like really clicked with her content, really vibed with her personality, and really trusted her opinions when it came to makeup. And I remember specifically her doing looks with the Moonspell palette from Lunar Beauty and just like talking about how she loved this palette, and it was a palette that she could do neutral looks with like a pop of color, and she created these really beautiful purple looks with this palette. And it was truly because of her that I decided to purchase this palette. This is not a palette that typically I would go for, and I was on the fence for so long. I would watch a video of her talking about it, and I would put it in the cart, and then I would think about it, and I would talk myself out of it, and then eventually I did decide to purchase this, and I'm so glad that I have this one. I think Lunar Beauties does such a fantastic job with their artwork and just the amount of energy that clearly goes into each product launch, and I'm so happy to have this in my collection. Definitely a purchase inspired by Julia Musicata. By the way, I will have everybody linked and their channels down below if you are interested in going to check out any of these creators. This next palette, so I know she was off YouTube for a while, and then she like would come back and make a video here and there, but Steph Nicole is like one of the first people I ever found on YouTube. I found her for her liquid lipstick. Back in the day, she would do liquid lipstick reviews. I was literally obsessed with. She inspired me to do my own liquid lipstick reviews on my channel, and I truly trusted her opinion so much. And she is 100% the reason that I purchased the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette, because she would rave about the quality of this all of the time. She would bring this palette up in video upon video upon video, so you really knew it was a favorite. And she would always talk about this being like the best eyeshadow formula, the best palette, etc. And while I don't get a ton of use out of this palette, I do think it's great quality, and I don't want to say I'm happy to have this in my collection. If this went missing, I wouldn't be devastated, but I do get the hype behind this, and she 100% is the reason that I purchased this palette. Next up, I have Lauren from Mae Beauty, and I knew when Glamlight released their like Martini collection that I wanted to pick up a palette, and I was thinking I was gonna grab the Dirty Martini palette, but then Lauren did, I want to say it was with the Dirty Martini and the Chocolate Martini, she did looks with each, and she discussed in that video how the Chocolate Martini palette in person looks a lot, like it has a lot more depth in person than like the teaser photos did online, and a lot more versatility in creating looks. I loved the look that she created, so ultimately she's the reason I decided to go with the Chocolate Martini palette. I think of her all the time when I use this eyeshadow palette. I love her channel. She is just so much fun. She definitely, her fragrance series I like live for. It's dangerous though, because it makes me want to like purchase all the fragrances, but I absolutely love her channel, and this is a palette that I think of and I think of her when I use this palette. Next up, Samantha March is one of my all-time favorite YouTubers. I have been watching her since like the Redwall days, and like literally do not miss an upload from her. She is truly, I feel like, my spirit animal. Like, she always talks about nachos and s'mores being like her favorite foods, and it's crazy because I've been asking this question for like probably the last like decade of my life. Like, I love to ask people, if you could have one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be? Like, I want your dinner and your dessert included, and I literally have been telling people mine would be nachos and s'mores, and like those are like some of her favorite things, and I'm like, this is like me in another person, and I just love her so much. So I have a couple of palettes. There's so many things that I've purchased off of her recommendation, but two palettes that stuck out to me: the Patrick Ta Major Dimension eyeshadow palette. I was not planning to pick up because it was more expensive, and it was a palette that I felt like I had the shades throughout my collection, but she picked this up, and she is someone who will talk about, you know, not wanting to spend $68 on an eyeshadow palette unless she can get it on sale. She purchased this full price, and she loved this palette. So I was like, okay, like I really want to get this palette. Plus, so many other people were raving about this palette, but ultimately I don't know that I would have purchased this had she not have purchased this and talked about how much that she loved it. And then the other one, I only purchased this because she would not stop talking about this eyeshadow palette from Natasha Denona. This is the Love eyeshadow palette, and while this isn't a favorite in my collection, I'm still happy to have it in my collection. I think it's beautiful, and she purchased this and would talk about how like this isn't necessarily something in like her realm of comfort, but always felt super artistically inspired when reaching into this, and like never ran out of ideas of looks to create, which piqued my interest. And then it was always like top of ranking lists that she would do. So ultimately I finally did decide to purchase this, and I definitely think of Samantha March whenever I pull this palette out. Okay, you guys know how much I love Emily from Emily and Mac. She is just someone who I find comfort in. Again, like will literally never miss an upload from her. She is someone who I feel like doesn't even know it, but like inspired me to really start reading again and start my book channel. I just like love Emily. She's from Canada, I'm from Minnesota. I feel like I love Canadians, so I feel like I have this like I love Emily so much. She creates so many great project pans and I love participating in them. So if you are a not new subscriber, you guys know I love Emily. A palette that I purchased and had never heard of this brand until I heard her talk about it in one of her Shop My Stash videos was Fantasy Cosmetica, and I picked up the Druid palette. Emily does have a code, which I will leave linked down below. Go check her channel out if you haven't, and if you're interested in this palette, please use her code and support her, because she is truly just like one of the kindest human beings I have ever found, especially on this platform, and she deserves all the support. But I thought this was such a fun palette. I love supporting indie brands. I love trying new indie brands. I love eyeshadow palettes. So this color story I thought was so grungy and fun and fall and unique. So I decided to pick this up. I used this for the first time yesterday actually, and I did like a really boring look and just used this gold shade, and I actually like loved the way, like it was such a quick, easy look, but I loved it. I do need to take the time, like when I feel like I have more time to do my makeup and I'm wanting to do a grungy look, I will reach into all these beautiful, scrumptious, grungy shades. Two of my shades did come broken, but I just pressed them back in, not a big deal. But definitely, Emily, thank you for the recommendation. Love this palette so much so far. And honestly, I just like love the color story too. It makes me happy to look at. You guys also know I love Alex. Her channel used to be One Beauty Addict, but she has changed it to her full name now. She is, again, just like one of the most kind people I have ever come in contact with. She has the cutest dog. I just absolutely love Alex so much. And I'd seen her rave about Menagerie Cosmetics so often, and I had my eye on the pastel palette and eventually did purchase this, and I think of Alex every single time I use this eyeshadow palette. She also is someone who, anytime I use JD Glow singles, like she is the reason I made a JD Glow single purchase, and I get a lot of like eyeshadow recommendations from her. She talks about herself as an eyeshadow enthusiast with a dash of project pan, and like that is like the epitome of her, and also just like one of the sweetest people ever. But she is someone that I truly like, I value her. I honestly just like even love her every day, her eyeshadow looks and the looks that she creates, but I really value her opinion when it comes to eyeshadow formulas. And I was definitely not disappointed in my Menagerie palette purchase. There are so many other, I've almost made Menagerie single eyeshadow purchases so many times, but just have not bitten the bullet and done it. And there are so many other palettes that I want to pick up from Menagerie, but just have not done so yet. If you are looking for a phenomenal, very pigmented pastel palette, I highly recommend this one, but I absolutely always think of Alex when I pull this palette out. Next up, let's talk about Kelly Gooch. She is someone, again, I never miss an upload. I've been watching her for so long. She's one of the first people that I watched do a project pan. She's like one of the people who I learned about project panning from. And there's a couple of palettes that I could have selected for this, but I feel like so many of us have purchased the Sigma Enchanted palette based on Kelly's recommendation. She has raved about this palette for years. It's been her top favorite palette in her entire collection. She has a Sigma Favorites collab with the Enchanted Mini, and every time I pull this palette, I think of Kelly Gooch. It's such a nice palette. I actually had not used this palette all that much up until this year, and I feel like I was using this so much the first half of this year. I feel like there's actually a lot of variety and versatility within this palette, and I think it's a really beautiful one that adds some uniqueness to my collection. 100% Kelly Gooch made me buy it. Next up, let's talk about Brit Clark. She is a wild ride. I love her channel. She has so much energy, and I just like, she's a riot to watch. And when this palette released, I remember her raving about this palette, and I really thought this palette was not for me, I just felt like I wouldn't get a lot of use out of it. For some reason, when I looked into this palette, all I saw were the blues. I didn't see like the neutral, like the top 2 rows. But she was just raving about how you could do neutral looks and you could do pops of blue. She created some really beautiful looks with this palette. And ultimately, I logged back onto the Lunar Beauty website and purchased this palette because she convinced me you could do neutral looks with this, and you absolutely can. I love this palette. The quality is great. I love Lunar Beauty. Again, they knocked it out of the park with the packaging. Very happy to have this. Brit Clark made me buy it. Samantha Ravendahl, I am obsessed with. Will not miss an upload from her. I think she is just so honest, and her sense of humor, her dry sarcasm, like I literally live for. Love her so much. Have been watching her for, like, she's one of my OGs, like watch her all the time. Trust her opinion like with everything, especially because I feel like she usually likes things that like other people don't like. So like if she's really willing to come on and say she loves these things that nobody else seems to, I really do trust her opinion. But I think of her every time I reach into the Desi and Katie Friendcation palette, because she is the person who I watched mix some of the shades. I believe she mixed this like reddish pink shade and one of the blues to create a purple. And she is a makeup artist, was a makeup artist. So I really trust her for like tips and tricks when it comes to makeup as well. And she is someone who allowed this palette to be much more versatile for me. And in fact, I don't believe I would have purchased this palette had I not watched her do that with this palette, because this was really expensive at the time it released. But after she was chatting through, like, realistically you have more than 10 shades because you can mix some of these shimmers to create other shades, I was like, oh, okay. And I purchased it obviously ultimately, and I adore this palette so much. I'm so happy to have this in my collection, and I think of Samantha every single time that I use this one. All right, I have 2 creators left. Let's talk about Kyla Fish. I found Kyla, I think in 2019 through her Project Pans, and she is another one that just like I love to watch. She doesn't post as frequently anymore, but she's someone who I can just like, as I'm doing my makeup, like put her Project Pans on or whatever it might be, and I just love to watch her content. And I can't remember when or what or why, but I was never planning to purchase the Urban Decay Honey palette, and she was just talking about how beautiful it was. She definitely has a warmer skin tone than me, but she was raving about this palette one day, and I decided I needed to go to Ulta at that moment and purchase this palette. So I always think of her when I use this. This is really good quality, especially considering Urban Decay palettes can be hit or miss. I think this is a phenomenal palette. It's beautiful. It has these really rich golden honey like mattes and shimmers, and it's, for a neutral palette, it's rather unique to my collection. But I definitely think of Kyla whenever I use that palette. And then my final creator is Sarah Rose. I love Sarah's channel as well. She does a lot of project panning. She does she chats about like sustainable beauty and just like being more sustainable within honestly your lifestyle, and I am someone who just loves to watch her channel as well. I have 2 palettes to talk about for her. First, I have the Aether Beauty Rose Quartz palette, and she is the reason I tried Aether Beauty for the first time. She was talking about how she didn't think that she was gonna like the formula the first few times she used her Aether Beauty formula or eyeshadow palette for the first time. She didn't love it, but she found ways to learn to love it by using like a glitter glue. Really made like some of the metallic shimmers pop a little bit more. And I believe I had never even tried anything from Aether Beauty until I heard her talking about it, and she piqued my interest in the Aether Beauty brand. But even more so, this Clarity So More Amazing palette. I remember when she purchased this, she was talking about how she wasn't sure she was happy with her purchase. Like, she's like, this is a really expensive palette and I just don't know that I'm gonna get the most use out of it. But then like 6 months-ish later, she was talking about this, gosh, must have been like April or May of this year. She was talking about this palette and she swatched a couple of the shades, and literally as I was watching the video, I logged on to the Clarity website and purchased this palette. It doesn't get much more like purchase because of influence from someone than that. And I think of her every single time I reach into this palette. So those are the 12, but I snuck in a few extra palettes, and the 12 creators that inspired these palette purchases. I would love to know if there are any palettes that you purchase based on recommendations, inspiration, influence from any of your favorite creators, and who they are in the comments below. What palette should I check out next? Also, leave any content ideas you have for my year-end palette week down below. I feel like I was struggling to come up with like palette themed ideas for this week. So if you guys have any ideas and suggestions on what you would like to see at the end of the year, let me know. Thank you so much for sticking around, watching today's video, for supporting me, for supporting this palette week. I appreciate it so much. I love you, and I will catch you in tomorrow's video. Bye.